So I'm going to make this the last week I do demos around the portrait project. But if you want to carry on, that's absolutely fine. Some of you kind of stuck into a project. So next session, I thought I'd do just a little bit on textures, which will be more perhaps geared towards landscape. So that's the next kind of couple of sessions. And then I think we've got a project on derelict as a theme. So I might even combine the two. So that's the next one sort of coming up over the next few weeks. But as I say, you're very welcome to keep going with portraits if you're looking there. So started off, first week I did like a basic kind of line drawing, and I can use this and develop this as my demo today. So that was really setting out the proportions and the shapes, features of the face. And I basically went through the process of how I do that. Basically looking for like a line of symmetry through the middle of the face and the head, then looking at eye level. Then I tend to start with features and work my way across here and then gradually down. And then I'll work out to get the face shape. So that's basically how I approach drawing people's faces. Then last week, it was more like quick sketches in oils, using a limited palette and not getting too bogged down in detail. So it's more kind of working with broader masses. So rather than concentrate on the individual shapes, it's looking at just a hint of colour, but more like the areas of light and dark. So this is a really nice exercise to do, enjoyable exercise, and you kind of need pictures with strong lighting, really, strong areas of light and dark to get the best out of that. So it's a nice one to do. So what I did there was I started off with almost like a thin wash of very thin, this kind of yellowy, peachy colour, and then gradually got darker. And I was using a limited palette of the Zorn palette, which is black and white and cadmium red and yellow ochre. So very limited sort of palette enabled me to just work quickly and also to try it out. Really. So that's that. Thought I'd do a little bit on pastels today. Perhaps look at children. Although these demos were using children, so I thought this was the Tuesday one that I started to develop. So that's kind of over 2 demos. Move that out of the way. But I thought I'd start fresh with this one. It's not exactly there are a few portraits. If I was going to develop it into a proper portrait, I don't think I've quite got the tilt of the head really right. I think she's a little bit more angled than I've got her. And she's got really big eyes, but I almost feel like I made them too big. I don't know. One of the things with drawing children is quite often the features, particularly the eyes, will appear bigger. Not always, but in some children they do. But you'll notice that like the features are a lot closer together than they would be on an adult. So as we grow older, things stretch out. Noses particularly get longer. So I think we tend to stretch out a bit as adults. So that's one of the distinctions or distinguishing things about drawing children. Obviously, skin tones are very smoothed out. There aren't sort of big, what would you call it, wrinkles and things like that. Quite smooth the faces. So pastels I find quite a difficult medium to. I've got loads of different colours here. All sorts of different sets, but I always find them quite a tricky medium to get naturalistic colours. So it might be worth maybe looking at just a hint of colour, a bit like we did last week with the Zorn palette, just a hint of colour and go for lights and darks. What I also find useful is just having a bit of scrap paper to try colours out and get a range of things that might fit the bill. I'm thinking, and I always find that once it can be quite difficult to see what they'll look like. They may not look too different just in the box than when we put them on the paper. So I'm going to try, it's quite dark, perhaps just a hint of some of these areas of shadow and not work too deeply. So this is, this is, it's just ordinary cartridge paper, and I think pastels work better on a coloured paper if you've got a coloured paper. I don't like them too rough. Some of the pastel papers are very textured. But I like something that will just hold the pastel, just the grain of the pastel. So perhaps in with a few areas that I can then layer up. These paper blenders are handy for just getting the pastel to be where you want it to be. I'm just trying to work some shadows into these areas. I can use fingers, which I sometimes find is a little bit easier, to be honest. So perhaps maybe slightly greyer under here. That's a bit too dark, isn't it? Slightly lighter. It's also worth having, for the lighter colours, have a bit of tissue or something to clean them up, because they do get a little bit grubby. So I think that for some of the darks, and then I'll work some of the lights in now. So maybe just a hint of that. And it's using the pastel on the side. Obviously you can use the tips as well. But to start with, I tend to just get some colours and tones roughly everywhere. Work that in. Actually, I'll just kind of work up one side. I think that's not too bad. Perhaps slightly pinker, so a tiny bit. This is almost fluorescent, so that's going to be too bright, but maybe just a tiny bit of that mixed in. Just warm up there. Here there's a bit of shadow on the side of the nose. Sometimes I like to use purples or lilacs. That can help to make the shadows a little bit cooler, sometimes a little bit more purpley. That's a colour that you could use it. A bit more light just to get that a little bit darker. And then around her eyes, that's probably where I'd use the pencils. I've got pastel pencils as well, and they're great for a bit more definition. So getting this kind of eyelash details for eyelash. I think I'll just get a little bit of colour in the whites of her eyes, which I'm a bit wary of making too bright. So I'm just going to go in with a pale grey to start off with. I'm sure that one went. Just a tiny bit of grey, and then I'll work a white into that. And then go in with the darks. So I use the pastel pencils for this because it's just a little bit easier to direct. Almost a tiny bit of blue in the reflection. So really just kind of making that a bit stronger. Come down to there. Bottom, yeah, just under the bottom eyelid, a little bit of shadow there, so I just want to get that in there. And that can a bit of that darken that a little bit. And then I just want to get these shadows around the top of the eye a little bit deeper. I'll go back to this brown. That might be a little bit too dark, but I can probably put some lights into that, lighten up a little bit. I think once you get some of the colours and tones, some of the tones in, it sort of brings it to life a little bit. Let's pick a little bit of that up and move that down to there. I think she's starting to emerge. That's a little bit more shadow under here. Is that enough? Yep. Just starts to sort of bring it to life. Sometimes things go wrong, so you can remove it. I usually start with like a stiff brush. That helps. And if I can find that. Yep, here we go. So I've got a couple of really worn out oil painting brushes. This one's hardly got anything there. That's quite nice for just removing little bits. And then once I've got most of it out, it kind of opens up the pores of the paper. I could then go in with something a little bit, slightly light, just get a little bit lighter there. Just bring some light into that area. You can sort of keep going.
You can put light on dark then.
Yeah, you can to an extent. What you'll find is sometimes it will pick up the dark. So I always used to do a bit like oil painting, do the darks first and then the lights. But with some colours, say if I had bright pink, if I wanted a bit of bright pink somewhere or bright yellow, if I had that next to something that's very dark, like something like that, then it's very easy to just kind of pick up and just sort of smear it all. So sometimes I'll put the lights in first, but over another lightish colour that will be fine. Yeah, something like that. And then maybe a little bit, something too pink, maybe a little bit more white around here. And once I've got the darks in around here, that will really sort of pop it up. So yeah, brushes, or sometimes these little electric rubbers are quite good for just lifting out tiny little dots and dashes, just a little tiny bit. Yeah. Okay, right.